Hi, Rick Jaspers here. Early voting has started for this very important upcoming election. I hope you've taken time to make a plan to cast your vote however you choose to. And of course, vote for Rick.
I'm Josh Tatum. I'm the Commissioner for District 2, the East Side. I'm glad y'all all came out tonight. I really appreciate it. I was going to ask my cousin if he'd open us with an invocation.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Pastor Blake. I'm the pastor here at the church. And we're very glad to open our doors for the community. And so if you would just pray with me real quickly. Lord, we ask that you be with us tonight. Help us to remember that we are all here for the common good of our people, of our county, of our town. Help us to treat each other well. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
They've asked me to let you know that there's restrooms in the back of the room and then down the hallway here. There's some bottles of water if people need it. There's also some coffee there in the hallway. So, again, I want to thank y'all all for coming out. I want to thank the Presbyterian Church for hosting us too. That was very kind of them for doing it tonight. And sorry about all the confusion about me having COVID and having to postpone the date. So, sorry about that. As I said, I'm the Commissioner for District 2. Chairman Stancil, he's the at-large Commissioner-elect of the county. Commissioner Pickens is for the District 1, the west side of the county. And a lot of people want to know what the differences are between us. Chairman Stancil, he handles more of the handles the day-to-day operations, preparing budgets, things like that for us, implementing the policies that are put in place by the commissioners. Commissioner Tippins and I, we do more of the big picture items. We're the ones who mainly vote at the meetings, that sort of thing. Unless we're in disagreement, then Commissioner Stancil would be the tiebreaker. We also have all final approval on any zoning requests. Just a couple of highlights here. We have taxes. This year we were able to roll back the millage rate again. And sorry too, I don't public speak very often, so bear with me. We were able to roll back the millage rate again, but we still are going to collect about $1.5 million more in tax revenue because of all the new building that's been going on in the county. The other big tax issue that's going on right now is the local option sales tax, or LOST. We are currently in negotiations with the city of Jasper about how to divide up that 1% sales tax. It's already in place currently. It's just the continuation that will happen as long as we and the city come to an agreement about it. Nelson and Talking Rock also get a portion of that sales tax as well, just not as much as the county and the city of Jasper. With that $1.5 million increase in taxes that are coming in from property taxes, we're mainly going to spend it all on raises for the public safety workers, getting them a little more up to par with our surrounding counties, plus they deserve it. So that's where most of that will be going, to get more in line with what they should be making. On the local option sales tax, we're negotiating about the amounts that we get between the two of us. We get a certain percentage, and the county or the city gets a certain percentage. Currently, it's us getting 70%, City of Jasper getting 25%. We're trying to up our portion to 77%, they're getting 16%. They've counteroffered with another offer, so we're in the process. What the lost money goes to is it rolls back our millage rate. So it goes directly back to all the citizens of the county, so we don't pay as high property taxes. That's why we do that. And the benefit of it is that people traveling through, buying things in tourists, that sort of thing, they pay that sales tax. A couple of projects we have ongoing right now. One is we're working with the City of Talking Rock to get a new fire station going there to help them out with that. A couple road projects. Grandview is done. We've gotten that finished up. It's in great shape. Cove Road, the first part of it's done. The second part will happen next year We couldn't do them both in the same year for financial reasons, but we got the patching part done, and then next year will be the redo of all of Cope Road to correct all the way from Steve Tate to the city limits. We'll redo that. And some upgrades at Roper Park that we start on soon. We'll be doing the new LED lights. That's the first step of redoing Roper Park. Once they get that done, then they're going to redo the walking paths. And they had to do it in that order because they would have to tear up the walking paths anyway to redo the lights. Then hopefully redo all the dugouts for all the baseball fields and make some new bathrooms, which I know because the park bunch would like that a lot. So my thoughts on managing growth in our county. To me, one of the greatest things about this county is our sense of community with each other. It's such an amazing thing, the way that we have, and I'm sure many of y'all volunteer at these organizations, of either the thrift store, CARES, Good Sam Hospital, Hope House Choice, all these other various entities, that we have that in this community. That's a very rare thing. That's not something that happens in a lot of places. And that it's having that sense of community, us being so small as we are, that really does help with that a lot. And talking with people, most people I talk to want as little growth as possible. They know we're going to grow some, and that's going to happen, but it's all about managing that growth. I don't know how many of y'all are lifelong citizens like me, but people who do move here are moving here to get away from all the growth south of us. That's why people move here. So we need to manage that growth so it doesn't go unchecked, and then if it goes unchecked, we just become overwhelmed, just like the cities to the south of us have done. We don't want to be Marietta or Woodstock. We don't want that to occur here. People who do are developers who come in here and make their money and leave. They have no real ties to our community or really care what happens here. Some ways to implement that. We can't let sewage service spread throughout the county. Once we have it, there's nothing we can do to stop it. That would not be good. That just encourages high-density residential growth, and we do not want that. Enacting ordinance for larger lot sizes, that sort of thing, so we have less homes per acre. Encouraging or requiring people to build their subdivisions, not where they're tract homes, where they just strip the land, level it, but more like how Bent Tree and Big Canoe have done, where they build into the land. It's a great example of how properly built subdivisions. And implementing impact fees on new construction. So far as commercial and industry, changing our ordinances so that you're required to leave buffers in front of the road, so you don't see everything from the road that's being built, and between the different businesses, and especially between residential areas. Then enacting ordinances where you have to have a higher quality building materials too. That way what you can see does look better. So that's my little part of the spiel. Again, I appreciate y'all coming. I'm sure y'all have questions. And I was going to ask Mr. Stancil if he'll take the podium for more day-to-day stuff, but I'm more than happy to also answer more generalized questions too. So.
Okay, he hosts the meeting and draws the crowd and does the introduction. That's right. So I will say thank you all for coming. I think regardless of if you're here because you're upset, regardless if you're here because you're happy, or if you just got questions, the fact that we're involved is wonderful. So I think this is the purpose. This is why both Commissioner Tatum and Commissioner Pickens both talked about having town hall meetings and the importance of trying to get a chance to have feedback. If you come to any of our formal meetings, if you've ever read Robert's Rule of Order and you're really excited and you love that when you go to bed at night to read about how exciting that is, it doesn't have a lot of opportunity for exchange, for back and forth, and to be able to answer questions because of the formality. So the intent is to really just open up the door and to kind of create a chance to ask questions and answer questions and to feedback back and forth. I would be remiss if I didn't remind everybody that early voting opened today. So for the next 3 weeks, you have an opportunity to go and vote, regardless of who you vote for, please. It'd be awesome if we could go back and look and see that we had overwhelming numbers in our community where people did get out to the polls and voted. So if you go to Roper Park and to the community center, then you can go in the main front door this time. We've moved it to the main room on the front side, so you don't have to go around back and try to follow, just go right in the front door, stay to your right. There's signs that say it, but everybody still wants to go to the left, so when you walk in, go to the right, and they'll get you through there. I went by and in about 5 minutes was in and out, so it was wonderful. So I'm going to open it up for questions. It may be something that if you want to ask specific to one of the post commissioners, we're all three up here because of one, the responsibility of managing day-to-day operations is on my shoulders. I probably have some more details. I will be the first to tell you if I don't know the answer. We're going to write down notes and make sure that we get that information and get it gathered. If you signed in, we will send a follow-up email afterwards. There'll be a survey, but it gives you the link of who to respond back and forth to. So if for some reason you ask a question and we can't answer it, we will try it. We will do everything we can to find you an answer. Do ask that we keep it civil. We go back and forth and have conversations, and we get to go. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to grab my notepad before I do, so I can write these notes down. And if y'all feel like we need another microphone going around, I actually have Graham here. The room is not real deep, so it may not be necessary. But if we're having a hard time hearing, we do have a mic that will have your questions. So if you want to raise your hand, we'll get you going. Yes, sir, Mr. Tatum.
Thank you. Commissioner Stancil, I'm Jeff Downing. I own the Foothills IGA market. I also own 20 plus acres of property that's behind there. I've spoken to all of you about our issue with our sewer system. 20 some odd years ago, Pickens County permitted a sewer system that is now nearing the point of failure. And we have to do something to correct that, or it could threaten the entire Foothills Village development, which is making a major contribution to the county in taxes, probably about $1.5 million a year, is employing 150 people, that has some 30-odd stakeholders that have invested in Pickens County, that has some 10,000 customers that rely on us in that corner to provide basic services that they use, and indeed, I've been told by many people, has had a whole lot to do with the growth of the county. So in my view, ours is not so much about development as it is about preservation. And we, of course, the county has been working on this problem for many years. Rob Jones, who is here, in the back someplace, I know, worked on a solution for some time, and that solution, he felt the best option was for us to tie into the existing sewer system at Big Canoe, owned by Utilities Inc. Of course, I cannot speak for them. They have not said they would do that. But that is what we have at hand. We believe that would be the best option for us to solve our problem long term. So we need to get by the first hurdle, if you will. The first hurdle is the county commission. At one point in time, we had 100% support, I believe, between the prior commissioners to do what we want to do. Today, I'm not sure what that number is. It's not 100, I know that. So we need to find a way to work together to move forward to solve the problem. Part of what I have, and I've shown this to the other two commissioners, Commissioner Tatum, this is over 4,500 signatures of people that are concerned about solving the problem. So I respectfully ask that you consider our situation and that we somehow work together to solve this problem.
Thank you. So I actually met with Ms. Van Horn with Utilities Inc. just, I think Thursday or Friday of last week. And it's not our first meeting. We've met multiple times. You and I have met multiple times. It's not something that's there. And one thing I think that we collectively in conversations have said, if you present us an offer that you're running into the shopping center, we can sit down and work on that. The fixing this for the shopping center is not the issue that anyone has. It goes back to the development side of things, and if we allow it to go in and one residential subdivision gets connected to it, that prevents us from anybody else that has proper or appropriate zoning that comes in requesting the same thing to occur we can't pick and choose the winners. We can't pick one property owner, and I'm not trying to pick on you with you here, but we've had this conversation. This isn't one that's there. If we pick you to be able to have sewer access for a residential community on top of the shopping center, and then the next property down, and the next property down, and the next property down. So what I've asked from Utilities Inc. is present us an offer that goes to the shopping center. We don't want to see the shopping center
No, we don't.
have an issue at all.
No,
We
we
want
don't.
to have that. If you can present us that offer, Utilities Inc. wants the additional customers to justify the expense for running it, and wants the capacity to be able to continue to expand that further down Steve Tate. And that's where we're trying to say, we are trying to prevent high-density mass growth to where you can't pull out of the gate of Big Canoe, or you can't pull out of the Foothills Shopping Center on the Steve Tate because there's too many houses that are down through there. And the example the first developer came and gave us was Holly Springs, was what he wanted to create a Holly Springs environment with townhomes. And I know he was just trying to share on the quality of home, but I think that what he did is echo the fear that we've had everybody that approaches us on a regular basis say they don't want to see unincorporated Pickens County become. And so that's where we're telling Utilities Inc., provide an option that goes to the shopping center, and we can sit down and we can talk. That's been the statement that I've given to them each time, and I know that they're looking for how do we justify that expenditure because of the desire to expand. But I think we've got, as stewards of the county and as stewards of the existing citizens in Pickens County that have expressed to us they don't want to see high density growth, we've got to make sure we're trying to respond on both ends. And we know that it's important. We know that there is the issue that's there on the tank, and we're not trying to create that issue. It's that if one shopping center, if not treated correctly, could expand to where you have subdivisions up and down both sides, or we're on the other side of the road, and then we put ourselves into a corner that we can't unring that bell if we do it. So that's why we're trying to be cautious, and I expressed it when we met last week again with Utilities Inc. that give us an option that runs it to the shopping center, and we're in. And that's kind of where it's sitting right now.
Could I say one more?
Yeah, sure.
And I understand that. And you know, I don't think anybody in this room wants Holly Springs or whatever the example is. But it seems to me that we're in a position of, on one hand, we're afraid we're going to have thousands of homes or whatever that number is. And so our position is we allow zero. And it seems to me there should be some room in between. We need some lower cost housing in our end of the county.
So I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because I know we were together with the attorney. The cost that was given to me for a townhome was not a lower cost. It was a $300,000 townhome.
That's right.
And that doesn't hit a low cost. And so it doesn't fit that category for the missing side of the housing market as much.
Well, perhaps so, but 300 is a whole lot less than what the average price of a home, for instance, in Big Canoe is being sold at today.
Right.
So it's an option. And, you know, we have many businesses, mine included, that are really struggling to staff the stores. I had dinner Thursday night at our Big Canoe Clubhouse. It took me 2 hours. 1 hour from the time I ordered to I got my food, because they have no staff. I've talked with John Loopy at Home Restaurant, and he tells me that he said, I can serve 200 people a night, but I only have staff for 100. So I cut it off at 100 because I don't want to give 200 bad service. I'd rather give 100 good service. I'm experiencing the same thing in my business, and I think many other businesses are. So my only point is, a couple of points. We need some lower cost alternatives, okay, whatever that may be. And then the second point is, isn't there room between 0 and thousands? I'm not a commissioner. I don't know how you control that, but surely there must be a way to have some reasonable amount of growth versus no growth, if you will.
We don't want no growth. We want growth on large lots that is not high density. That's what we're shooting for. So you don't become what is happening to the four-way. We don't want what they built down there at Worley Crossroads or what they're about to build in Philadelphia to be lining Steve Tate. And that is what will happen. People want that. Developers want to do that to our county. And the people who I have spoken with do not want that. And that's what would happen if we allowed the sewage to come out.
And I understand that. I understand your point. But again, Utilities Inc. is the first hurdle from my point of view of what we've got to do to solve the problem. Whether we get beyond the next hurdles, and there's several of them, remains to be seen. Utilities Inc., from their point of view, in order to make it work, needs a certain number of customers. And that's where the townhomes, if you will, or whatever's built on the acreage that I happen to own, I wouldn't develop it, someone else would develop it. And by the way, I'm certainly not going to be in the sewer business whenever we solve this problem. I wish I'd never done it to begin with, quite frankly. But that gives them the rooftops they need, I believe. Again, I can't speak for them, but this is what I've been led to believe. It makes it economically viable for them to do it. So it solves a problem. Zero cost to county, zero cost to anyone except the users there at the Foothills Village, which will eventually pay for it. And I think it's the very solution that the county had been working on. Rob, can't speak for you, where's Rob? Correct me if I'm wrong, but for years, that's the solution you had been working on. The missing link was always, how do you pay for the $1.5 million to run the line? So that's what I'm asking you commissioners to consider. You know, this is a matter of preservation more so than it's a matter of growth, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Amy Troffenbaum from Big Canoe. Are you all looking at anything about rental ordinances similar to Dawson County?
I'm not familiar with Dawson, so if you could inform me on that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, I can,
Or if you know.
and we've gone back and forth. We've actually reviewed Dawson counties. We've also reviewed White County and Lumpkin and a couple others. And I haven't spoke directly with the county manager in Dawson, but I have spoke to several of the others. The issue they're having is it's an unenforceable ordinance. There's no way you're putting neighbors, making phone calls on neighbors inside gated communities that are creating just an unenforceable ordinance to where you have to go on all of the sites. And I think one of the biggest concerns is they're advertising on Airbnb or VRBO or one of these other sites that a house will hold 20 people when it's a 4-bedroom house that has a septic tank that was designed for 3 bathrooms. And I think that's where the concern starts coming, is how they're advertising on these marketing sites and having to come. ACCG hosted a North Georgia a group of commissioners, county managers, city managers to come together to try to look at a way that they're trying to solve. I know Dawson jumped out on the very front end and got an ordinance in place, but I think they've really struggled on the ability to enforce that ordinance. You've put another law in the book that's an unenforceable law. So they're trying to look at ways that how can we manage this more closely as to how is it to have something that is enforceable, because our single county marshal is standing in the back. If all of his time was neighbors calling because their next door neighbor rented their house, then we would never be able to enforce any other ordinance, because we would be trying to trace down a ghost in some sense. So they are working on kind of a more uniform North Georgia solution, because this is not unique to only Pickens and Dawson. I think when I talked to the commissioner in Fannin, it's become the #1 topic Fannon's dealing with. Towns County, it's all of the North Georgia counties are dealing with the same thing. When ACCG looked at their legislative, and I see Mr. Jaspers in here, they looked at their schedule for what was top priority on the legislative session for what's coming up, and it was the #1 item. So the lobby group from the ACCG will be bugging Mr. Jaspers quite a bit on trying to get a statewide regulation, and I think they did a great job when they worked on the overall hotel-motel side of that law. So this gives a chance to kind of add a little bit more teeth to kind of define those characteristics, that it has to be within the bounds of what that house was built to serve. But it becomes difficult, because if you start to enforce that to the letter of the law, and your 16-year-old daughter has a sleepover and 9 of her friends come over for a spend the night party, technically you've just violated that same law. as what it would affect on trying to do short-term rental limitations. So that's why we're being cautious, trying to watch. And I think some of the other counties that did get an ordinance in place kind of spoke up afterwards and said, we kind of wish we'd waited just a little bit longer. And when they picked it up as one of their top items that they wanted to put on the calendar for the state, I think that's going to help with getting the state level. And that just occurred on Friday. Actually, it's when the vote for what items would be top on their agenda. So it's not being ignored. It's just a very difficult. Now I know that and I've had conversations with you guys at Big Canoe. I've had conversations with Ventry as well. You guys have tools that are way more open in terms of your rules and regulations that are beyond ordinances, so that within the bounds. But I think y'all are faced with the same difficulty of enforcement. I mean, how do you pick and choose? Because I live in one community right behind us, and I can imagine the next door neighbors calling on their next door neighbors frequently would be a common thing, and jumping on the app to talk about it on either Facebook or the next door app. So, yes, sir.
We do at Big Canoe have at least taken a step to create a rental advisory group that is composed of both persons who rent and lease their homes, along with some really good-minded folks who are involved in the rental industry within Big Canoe. And we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, because obviously there are different goals of each of the groups. But we are comfortable with the progress that we're making along those lines.
Good. Yes, sir.
I've been in Big Canoe for about 20 years. And I've been in Big Canoe for about 20 years. And we moved up here from Sandy Springs. And we moved up here for exactly the reasons you said. The day I retired, we came up here. But coming up here means more than just being in the woods. It means having a good experience at a restaurant. It means having access to groceries. It means having access to cleaners. It means having access to a lot of things that we need. And what I'm hearing, because I'm an outsider on the issue for the most part, but what I'm hearing is a line being drawn in the sand that it's 0 or it's way out over here. And I think you have to recognize that as homeowners, we want to go to a restaurant. We want to be served. We want to go to a store, et cetera, et cetera. And I think because the parties seem so far apart that it just doesn't seem reasonable from a business standpoint. It's more than being in the woods. It's being in the woods and enjoying a lifestyle that requires a lot of support businesses. So I would just encourage anything that can bring you guys together closer. And I understand your point of view, I understand Jeff's point of view, but right now I'm just hearing opposite ends.
No, I understand completely. And that goes back to, like I said, we've told Utilities Inc., if you're running into the businesses, then we're in. We'll sit down, let's find a way to have it, and we've just got to be more cautious when it goes down the residential side. Part of it goes back to when zoning was originally put into place. If any of you have spent any time playing around on the QPublik map and clicked on the zoning link, I know Mr. Dobbs is back there and his staff has done a great job making sure that QPublik system is updated regularly. But if you click on zoning and start looking around the Steve Tate area, the number of neighborhood commercial and highway business properties that were zoned that way, because when it was originally put in place, people had the choice, and then some of those are because it's Big Canoe property and some of them are neighboring across the street. Those are the 2 categories that allow for high density housing. And so if those categories stayed the same throughout that entire area, it was intended for neighborhood commercial, for commercial businesses, but it also does have a leg that creates a housing opportunity in there. Up to 5 townhomes per acre that could go on there versus the 1 per acre in a suburban residential zone. So we're trying to find a way that if we pull the trigger on allowing that, and it's allowed for the full access of the Steve Tate, even if it's only one side of Steve Tate or if it's the other side of Steve Tate, all of those properties become able, without even having to go through a rezone process, just by having available sewer, they become available. So a 3-acre piece of property, which normally would be a single home site in unincorporated rural Pickens County, would then become potentially a 15 townhome development. And we have to take that into consideration, because once we pull that trigger, you can't unpull that trigger. Once it's started, you can't stop it, especially for the ones that were already zoned in that way. We might have some teeth in terms of ones that wanted for future rezones that had property that was adjacent or touched, that we would be able to defend and explain why or how we were trying to do that. But that's the whole reason for the caution. We're not trying to be far apart. We're not trying to, I respect Jeff tremendously. I'm a shopper at the store and at the dry cleaners, and other than now I have to wear Groucho Marx glasses to walk in. I grew a beard just to try to see if I could go shopping. But I really do. I know the situation. I know what's going on, and I don't think that anybody on the commission feels any different than that. We want to see that be a successful endeavor, but we've got to be cautious to make sure that whatever we're doing, and we're taking every potential we can to make sure that we've got people that are looking at our ordinances to see if there's some changes on some of the zoning classifications, categories, that could help with improving that possibility and making where it's realistic, and to make sure that anything that we do was bulletproof. If we did allow the full Foothills Village shopping and residential development to occur behind it, how do we keep it there? Is Utilities Inc. willing to say that that's the only place? And that's a statement I've not been able to get, that they say that they're willing to say they will never expand beyond that. With those two things, there's always a, well, what about this property and what about this property? So it's trying to get that clear answer, and so that's why we've told them from the get-go, shopping center, yeah, we want to see if we can find a way to get this to the shopping center, but as far as the residential, we've got to see a much tighter game plan so that we make sure that we're all together on that one. So it's not, yes, sir.
I'm David Powell, I live in Big Canoe, and I'm listening to what you're saying about Utilities Inc. You say you're waiting for a proposal from them, but you just, I think, indicated what the last part of that sentence is, for a proposal that limits the use of Utilities Inc. services to anybody else except Foothills. So it sounds to me like that's a business impasse. There's a very low probability that they would agree to that. So, in that event, specifically, what's your recommendation to keep Foothills alive if you're not willing to let Utilities Inc. do their deal?
So I'm not Mr. Dunning's advisor, his attorney, or his aide, so I can't tell him what to do, what not to do. I can put it in kind of a blunt, simple term, and I'm not meaning this to sound, but it's a private sewer system. Every one of you that have a septic tank at your house, it's your private sewer system at your house. If your private system fails, you're expected to repair your private system. This is a much larger private system, and I know that it was purchased out of preservation when the previous developers had gone out, but it's still a private system. The repair needs are there. And so it depends how you want to look at it. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that argue that it's the responsibility of the owner of the private system to fix the private system that's there. We also understand the impact that it has on the area, and we're trying to say, that's why I go back to telling Utilities Inc. If y'all work out an arrangement for you to come and run sewer to the shopping center, we will work with you on that. But we're not going to destroy the entire character area against the comprehensive plan in the process. We've got to make sure we're protecting that character area and that comprehensive plan by preserving the property without seeing it overgrown. So the options are, one, fix the system, and then there's two, if there's an agreement that's made with Utilities Inc., either for them to run it by themselves, or if it's agreement with the businesses that are there to help fund the line to come out, then that's something that would be a private partnership. When it gets to a private-public partnership, it becomes a different animal. When you've got a government and a private company going into partnership together as to trying to set up the terms as to where that can go versus where it can't go. So that's why we've been back and forth and exploring it. We've not received a formal presentation. We've had numerous conversations, but we've not received a formal presentation as to, hey, we want to run it just to this area, even including the 13 additional acres, I think, beyond where the current sewer system is. if they've not presented something that says we will only go to the shopping center and this 13 acres. The conversations are always expanded far beyond that with all of the Steve Tate route, not a force main that only goes to that area. So I hope that you can kind of understand our hesitancy when they're not willing to limit it to that one particular area, even if it did include that additional single development that was there. And if they did provide that, then we could actually have the meeting and try to have that discussion. Have a great relationship with Utilities Inc. I'm not trying to, I know it sounds, when we're having these conversations, it sounds like I'm trying to put down and I'm not. I'm just trying to explain why we're trying to be so cautious so that we don't put ourselves into a position that we can't ever come back from. I think that we all understand the importance of the need for the shopping center, but we also understand, because we've seen it. If you try to drive through Hickory Flat or any of the unincorporated parts of Cherokee County between Roswell and Woodstock, or if you try to drive in Forsyth County, countywide, it's once sewer is expanded outside city limits into unincorporated areas, the population growth overtakes it, and it overtakes it very, very fast. And that's what we're trying to make sure. We're not trying to say no growth. We're trying to say 1 acre lots and up is kind of our primary focus for unincorporated Pickens.
Follow-up question. If your option of repairing the existing system, which I'm not even sure is a real option, would the county be willing to give tax rebates to the shopping center to help fund some of that work?
I don't know the legal options as to how that can be done, but we'd be willing to sit down and have a conversation to see is there a legal precedent as to how that can be done or not. I don't, like I said, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to try to give an answer that I really don't know the answer, but I would be very willing to learn how that potentially could be done if that's something that the Development Authority could do or not. So, yes, sir. I'd get grammar moving faster. Or you guys raise your hands slower, wouldn't it?
My name is Terry Stewart. Thank you for having this meeting, by the way. You've been very specific in talking about, round of applause for me. You've been very specific in talking about a line to Foothills Shopping Center, very specific.
Right.
What is the county's position on what would have to be run to the senior citizen center, or I'm not sure what they're calling it, that's going to be built in villages that would need sewer services?
So if you look at the service delivery map that's in the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, which was originally signed in 2001, I think updated in 2011, and it still sits there today. The line for Big Canoe's water and sewer service delivery area goes right through the middle of the parcel where that's going to be built. So it already covers the property. We kind of made a joke, as long as they ran the sewer line down the left side of their building, they'd be okay. The line, I think, in the mapping was just prior to any official GIS mapping. It was just a fat line that went through the property, and it looks like it's following along that track line. So it gets within the bounds that are already in their service delivery area. So they already have the right to be able to develop and run that water and sewer inside that territory to where that center is in that particular area. And it's where the lines where the service delivery map was drawn prior to. But if you look at it and you look at the parcels, that line literally runs right through the middle of the parcels. And so it's obvious the intent when the map was there that it just wasn't GPS to exact points back when it was done. But that map was originally drawn 20 years ago, and so it needs updated, it needs cleaned up, but it runs right through the middle of the parcel where that retirement, if you can say senior or not, but the retirement home is. So.
What would fit me?
Yeah.
So, just to clarify, so I understand,
Mm-hmm.
the village's senior citizen center that's going to be built, there is no decision to be made by the county.
Yes.
That decision is already made, and that bell has already been rung,
Yes.
using your terminology, to tie into UIG's facilities that operate inside of Big Canoe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Whenever UIG purchased I don't know if they purchased rights or the water system and the water and sewer system, they became part of that same product. This thing. Anybody have anything that's not related to sewer? Just for a break. We can go back to sewer. Cove Road's a mess. Surely somebody wants to fuss about that and take a break and come back. So.
I've got it.
Okay, all right.
This is actually highway related.
Okay.
2 questions. One, are there any plans to do anything about the traffic circle at the intersection of Cove Road and Steve Tate that seems to be a target for semis and things like that, take it out on a regular basis? And the second question, it seems like the road from Yellow Creek down to the front gates of Big Canoe are basically one continuous sign, some of which often are a little bit scatological in their presentation. I'm not sure if anything can be done about that, but I would be interested to know.
All right, so answer to the first part on the roundabout. I know we've been working back and forth with the engineers. The curbing that creates the triangles on all 3 sides, not 4 sides necessarily, was kind of built high, and it's a tight roundabout. If you were to drive a truck, you can't go through it without going up on the curb. So they're working on creating a sloped, I don't know the official terminology. I'm kind of looking at Kurt, hoping he would say me, but
it's changing the radiuses on the curb and where it's easier for a truck to.
yeah, that's what it is. Changing the radiuses was the terminology I was really going for. But the one thing is we're looking at that right now. The engineers have been out there. They've been working on the bids. The second, and I wish Scott was here, because Scott's been bugging me by email quite a bit on this one, and we finally got the pricing back today from Amicalola to add some more lighting around the roundabout, some better street lighting. So Amicalola has sent us a couple different options this morning, so we've got that information back. So we're in the middle of working with Amicalola to try to light that intersection better. We've added rumble strips, we've added another sign that tries to warn you that there's a roundabout coming, but for some reason, the big rock that says Big Canoe in the middle of the road is tough to see. I don't know what the, I don't know. It kind of makes me nervous. These people are on the road with us every day. Signage, the vast majority of the ones are grandfathered in. They were there prior to the ordinance being there. Now, as long as they don't change the frame and the background of it, then there's nothing we can really do. Those signs were there. There have been 2 additional ones that were, maybe 3 on Steve Tate. I know 1 was on Cove, and I think 2 were on Steve Tate, that were been put in since that time period. They're nicer quality signs, but there are a couple of them that are right on the line as to where the right-of-way is. One that's probably across the right-of-way, but there's also a fence that he built on the other side of when he built that sign. So that if he's across the right-of-way, the fence is across the right-of-way, and the whole section has to come out. So there's only one that was kind of questionable. The rest of them were within the legal bounds, or they were grandfathered prior to the sign ordinance being signed into place. And we just, I understand what you're saying. It does get difficult when you're looking at one billboard after another when you go through there. It should make you feel proud as a Big Canoe resident that you are the target audience for a lot of people that are marketing, because they all want you to see their signs and they're purchasing those things up. I do commend Rob for years ago trying to get that sign ordinance in place to prevent that from becoming a problem. But the unfortunate part is those that got grandfathered that were there before. There's nothing he could do or we can do except for, you know, if they ever came down and prevent them from going back up and then make them follow the new standards if they ever did. So I hope that answers.
That's a good answer. Quick follow-up.
Okay.
We're in election season. So in addition to the signs that you're referring to, or I'm referring to, we're now seeing a proliferation of everybody's political signs, which often seem to linger far after the elections. Mm-hmm. Is there any requirement for somebody to take care of that, or do they just get to hang around until they wear out?
So I can give you the letter of the law. In Pickens County, the ordinance basically says that they're not supposed to go on the right-of-way at all. So the ones that are sitting on the county right-of-way could be taken down every time they get put up. There are a lot of counties that have gotten into a lot of legal back and forth and trouble for taking down signs and then getting accused of only taking down one party versus the other party. And so for the most part, during the election process, the general rule of thumb is to allow it until they become a hindrance, or if they're in somebody's yard, is to get them. Most of the ones that you see linger after the fact are typically on the private property. They're not on the right of way. I think our road department crews do a good job, especially in the spring elections, because they've got a mow, of getting those signs up really as fast as they can, the ones that are in the right of way. During the wintertime, they're not as quickly removed by the road department, but I do think that there's been enough of them that our public works crews they're driving them crazy trying to work around them. So the moment the election's over, I think that they will be very happy to start picking those up and get them. Most of the state signs are the ones that get left up for a long time. I know there's been a couple local candidates. Most local candidates get theirs up quickly. The state ones, so there's really no individual you can pick up the phone and call. I wish I could say I had all their numbers, but Herschel Walker's not answering a single call I've made yet. But so when you get into some of those signs, it's a little bit more difficult. But in the ordinance, I mean, it's one of those things you want to have it in place to where they're there. I think that one thing we've discussed in one of our planning meetings a little while back is the potential of following the lead of Jasper, where we require a deposit for signs to be placed out there, because they're going to put them up anyway, and that way that deposit is held, the check is held, and then if they don't pick their signs up, then we deposit the check, and then we go get their signs up and we got a check for it. So that's one thing that we've entertained, that maybe would be a deterrent, that they're going to come in and tell us we've got our signs up much quicker. So, God, Mr. Jaspers is here, he probably could call it.
I was just suggesting, Commissioner, if a candidate does not pick up their signs, don't vote for them next time.
That's your education.
Thanks, is it on? Okay, great. First of all, thanks for this, and thanks, Mr. Jaspers, for coming out. We appreciate it. So, you know, we had a potential controversial zoning that was close by, where we have our beautiful Big Canoe and our Northgate Shopping Center. Rather than dodge bullets every time, I wonder if we could consider an overlay district that came down Steve Tate and down across, you know, that part of 53 where Foothills and that is. And I know there's been some success with those. I don't know where to start or how it begins or whatever, but if you look at, say, Avalon, or you look at downtown Milton and some of those areas, how would a community even start that process to start to look at and say, everything that comes down Steve Tate and that so much of the corner of 53 is going to look and have a feel that's Northgate Shopping Center to some extent. How are those possible? You know, you see them and...
I think you answered part of your question in your question when you said start.
Yeah.
And we mentioned the signs that get grandfathered in once they're there. So once somebody has that property and it's got the rights that they purchased that property under, they have property rights on that property. So you can go make all the changes in the world that you want for future, but it's hard to do anything to enforce the current, the ones that have that, unless they are willing, or if it's a new development and it's one developer that's doing, so when Big Canoe was built, there was the standard put in place, and it fell in line. So it makes it difficult to come back and undo what's there to redo with something new because they have their property rights that are there. It is something, and I think I referenced it a little while, we are working with a company right now that's going through our ordinances kind of line by line and doing comparisons with similar sized counties, similar size, to try to find out what steps we can take to help provide opportunities like that. And then when you say an overlay district, by kind of taking our character areas and making those more clearly defined, because there are some areas that need to be able to build a metal barn. They're farmland. They need to be able to have a metal structure. So if you follow an ordinance that says it has to have windows and brick, well, you've just took away any farmer's ability to create a building on their property. So it's that balancing as to where those different things are. And I think that we've got a great start right now, but I think that going through and trying to review where we are today versus where we were when some of those were put in place, and try to look at the success stories on some of those other counties and find out what we can do. So we've engaged Buena Veritas is the name of the company, and Buena Veritas is going through doing the reviews. They're starting with about 6 right now that they're currently going through and trying to identify and looking at where we've had issues in the past, or looking at where we could try to make improvements to where we can do so responsibly. But it's going to be probably going to be a year long, possibly even a little bit longer than that process of going through a review. And we don't want to, I know that I've seen where municipalities would roll out a whole new zoning ordinance and they changed every law and every rule all at one time, and only to find out that they had a few things in there that didn't fit their area at all. We had one a couple of years ago that had banned the ability to illuminate your flag. Well, anybody that understands flag rules knows if you fly your flag at night, it has to be illuminated, and so they took away the ability to properly fly a flag in their ordinance, and had to hurry up and try to amend their ordinance almost right after they did it. So that's why I say it'll be a slow process, because when we do it, we want to make sure we're not constantly having to come back and undo what we did, and then try to seek a lot of input from a lot of people at the same time. What else we got?
Thank you. Bill Scott, Big Canoe, Commissioner Tatum, I'm going to throw the grenade at you. Based on an article that was in the smoke signals, the fellow that you went against in the election, the following conversation happened during his Q&A. Asked how much the county tax base did Big Canoe represent? Becky Denham, outgoing Eastern District Commissioner, estimated that it was about 26 to 30%. Several in the crowd asked how much of that came back to Big Canoe, which provides most of its own services. Garner pointed out that Big Canoe has a PR problem with the rest of the county and intimated that it can expect little support for issues related to Big Canoe. But I'd like to know what percent does Big Canoe pay? Now I've gone to the administration and I've gone to the elected officials. You're 2 counties apart. I'd like to know basically what it is and how much comes back to Big Canoe. Thank you.
Before you get to what it is, we've got the tax assessor right back there, and I know he shared that percentage with me before, but I was trying to remember, so.
20-some-odd% is incorrect. So whoever made that comment didn't check, okay? And Becky Denny knew it was about 13%, because I've had those conversations with her. What I have shared with a lot of these people is between Big Canoe in Pickens County and Bent Tree together, those are 2 high-density areas right here, it's approximately about 25%. It's about 1/4 of the overall value. Does that answer your question?
I think so. You and I had a conversation on the phone. And yes, I worked in government before, and when an elected official says 30 and an administrator says 15, something's wrong.
Yes.
And even at 15, you're talking about $3 million, give or take. That's a lot of money. What comes back to Big Canoe?
All of the services that everybody else gets in the county, and that's an answer for whether you're on the west end in Loveville, if you're in downtown Jasper, whatever. The only thing Jasper's got different, we're talking Rocker Nelson, they have an added tax for extra services. But it is that simple.
And you're taking into account that Big Canoe provides its own services.
Wherever you're at, yes, whatever your situation is.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
No.
Your property, let me step back so you can hear about it. Your property taxes pay more for administrative issues, or administrative funds, paying for the county workers, the park system, that sort of thing. Infrastructure is paid for through our SPLOST, and then education through the eSPLOST. A lot of the infrastructure for those things. So most of your property tax money goes to pay for all the different departments that we have in the county, so to run their payrolls and that sort of thing.
And if you don't mind, I'll
Yeah, you can try that too.
If you dial 911, every county service is coming in whatever you're calling for. So if you call and you request law enforcement, the sheriff has got deputies that are coming to you. If you need fire department's coming to you. I know you have a fire department that's one of them that's supplemented from the county as well, but the fire department's coming. The 911 operator is going to be there to talk whoever's answering the phone through whatever that question is. I live in Tree that provides their own road department, provides a gate, provides many of the different services that are there. I pay that extra to choose to live in that type of a setting, and so I don't expect that I'm not going to be able to still call 911 and get any service that I'm needed. I just choose to live somewhere that pays for some other things. So there are a lot of services that are there. The roads that get you to your subdivision are all provided. They're all the county roads that are in place that are there. It provides your courthouse, it provides your magistrate judge, it provides your probate judge, it provides your superior court, it provides your coroner, it provides your senior citizen center. It provides a number of services that all those taxes collectively are what are used to fund all of those different things. They don't just one thing that goes into place.
I understand.
So, and that's the kind of the bigger picture. And I know there's a lot of people that have had this debate for a long time, and some have looked at every option that they can. But there are a lot of other services that are there other than just roads. And in water, for instance, county water is funded by water customers. It's not actually funded through tax revenue. It's an enterprise fund that funds itself. So that one hopefully gives a little bit more clarification. All right, I know we took a break. Anybody want to go back to sewer? I'll so Roy raised his hand before I could get to it.
Because we've talked about political signage and we all love it so much, I have got to brag on this area and our representative, Rick Jaspers. If you'll look at Rick Jasper's signs when he puts them up, they're not new signs. He's very frugal. They would have been to several other collections. He's very tasteful in the way he puts them up. But this is where this cat is above everybody else. With the sanity that the voters in this area demonstrate, I predict he will win his election one more time. Now watch his signs the day after and 2 days after the election, if I'm correct. And you're going to ride by his signs, and this guy goes out and puts thank you on his political signs. I wish everybody did what you did. Thank you for doing it.
So if you put thank you, can you leave them up for another? I tried to do that with big ones here in mine. I got tired of taking down big ones, so I put thank you on those following his lead and then got the rest of the small ones up. And then a couple weeks later, I realized, gosh, I still got to go get those things down. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just listening to this from a vantage point that, and I think Jeff had made the observation that it's like an all or nothing. And Utilities Inc. is a business, and they want customers. And part of their philosophy on extending the line is that they would be able to pick up additional customers. They've already got existing customers, okay? From your vantage point, you do not want out-of-control, high-density development that's going to overtax infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. Somewhere in the middle there has got to be an acceptable solution where Utilities Inc. would be able to pick up some additional residential customers. And you all should be able, through your zoning mechanisms, be able to say this is not high density. We're going to do townhomes. We're going to have something that would somewhat limit the number.
And that was why I tried to reference existing zoning, because existing zoning in that area already has the capability of, if sewer is there, high density growth could go with it. And without us going before, if you already own a piece of property in this zoned highway business and you come in and say, I want to attack to the sewer that's running in front of my property, we don't have a tool to stop you from them doing it if you're already zoned that way, if they're allowed to be where they're at. It goes back to, once again, the ball's been placed in their court is to say, tell us you can limit it to, even if they want to limit it to a scope beyond just the 25 to 30 businesses that are there, tell us you can limit it to the 80 or 90 total customers and show us how you're going to limit it to those total customers and not expand it beyond that. And that's not been answered yet. And I don't know how else to say that. They say they need 80 plus customers to be able to make this a cost break. I think that they said that over 5 years that it would cover the cost, and then after that 5th year they could make profit with 80 customers. And that's based on pricing from a couple of years ago. So if they could provide us for something that says we're going to limit what we bring in to 90 total customers, hey, where's that going to be? How are you going to limit it? And then let's get something that locks that in that only allows it to go to those customers, then we would listen to that. We can't get that answer back now because they want that continued potential expansion because of what you said. They're a private business. They're not there just to serve. They're not a government. They're not there to serve an area. They're there to make profit. And so they want to see the potential for expanded profit. We're telling them, if you can show us that you're going to limit it to what's there that would cost to get the line there, then let's sit down and talk. And we can't, whether it's just the businesses or whether it's businesses plus a limited number of residential, we've not been able to get that answer back yet. Now, they may be working on it right now because we had that same conversation again last week, and they may be trying to come up with, if we serve these specific parcels or if we serve this particular area, we will not exceed X number of customers. Then we can take that and have that conversation. But we've got to have that commitment, and we've got to have that in a legally binding way. Otherwise, everything in front of that pipe becomes something that can tap onto that, and most of it's already zoned neighborhood commercial or highway business that we can't control because it's already zoned that way. So once public sewer is available through there, our ability to control that through rezone hearings is out the window. We could control agriculture or residential that tried to rezone and become highway business, but the ones that already are, they already are. So we've got to be cautious as to how that's there.
One thing you can do is go to the Q Public website, and you can zoom into the Foothills area and click the zoning on it, and it'll show you what the zoning is for all the properties around there, and just look at how many are highway business. Because highway business you wouldn't think could be residential, but it can. It can be high density residential, and you'll see how many properties.
It's also neighborhood commercial. They're two different categories.
So that's the thing. Yeah. Those can all become high density residential, can be high density residential on them. So that's the thing we would not be able to solve.
Franny Farias from Big Canoe. So I heard you mention continuously 1 acre lots.
Mm-hmm.
But we of course know that probably, 10 years or more, a large tract of land that went from development went into a conservancy. So all of those properties which were intended to be part of it, some of it high density, some of it community development or business development, that is all ended because of it being in conservancy. I would not want to have a strip of businesses up and down Steve Tate. That to me is not attractive, but having subdivisions that flow off of that, is there not some way that 1 acre lots, which are required for septic, can be modified? If you don't want 5, maybe it's 3. 3 homes to an acre, or 2 homes to an acre. There's got to be a better solution than just none, because we're taxed to death on our side, and we don't have the services from the county. We do it all ourselves.
So when you say that, that's a Board of Health rule. That's not a Board of Commissioners. The Board of Health establishes that you have to have an acre for a septic tank. That rule is set in place.
That's pretty much all over the place.
Yeah, that's kind of a minimum standard that's there. So there's not the option of creating that until with septic service being provided. without a complete rewrite and somehow finding a way for all zoning categories to be completely changed for all existing properties, no, there's no way we can limit that under what they can and can't do within those categories if it's already defined as it can have up to so many townhomes per acre. So we have to go through, and like I said, as part of the process in trying to evaluate our zoning and evaluate our ordinances, to look and see, are there different opportunities for ways that we can try to explore those. Right now, the way it's currently written, if public sewer is available on those properties, then they can develop and build if they're zoned in that way. And we can't stop that from happening on the ones that are zoned that way. So we're doing what we can within the parameters of what we have in place with our current zoning map.
So to me, it is a no-growth attitude.
And that's not been what we've said a single time. And we keep getting represented that way. We keep saying it's a slower growth. We want larger lot sizes in unincorporated Pickens County because we're trying to avoid the high density.
Size is referenced an acre.
An acre is, lot size is what we're considering to be the minimum category of one of our standard residential lots. And that's if you're a suburban residential, and it goes all the way up to 3 if you're in different categories. So we're saying, if people want to build homes with larger lot subdivisions and continue to move forward. Developers want to make maximum profit and put more homes on smaller acres, but they're still selling them for the same price as the large lots.
That's true, but there's a housing shortage, and there's a need for all price points.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start with 1 acre, it makes it very difficult to have a affordable housing of some sort, whether it's multifamily.
But they're not building them affordable. And I know that, and I'm not trying to say that argumentative, but affordable now, $300,000-$400,000 is what the price is. Well, somebody that's getting a job working at a restaurant as a busboy is not going to be able to buy a $300,000 home. So when we're trying to define affordable and we're trying to say it's for workforce, that's not just a Big Canoe or Marble Hill problem. The city of Jasper can't hire McDonald's clerks at $15 an hour. The Wendy's, they have to close. They can't stay open until their hours are there because they can't hire employees. It's not just a housing thing because they have affordable apartment housing right next to where they're at and they still can't staff them. We're trying to hire firemen and we're trying to hire sheriff's deputies. So
there's not existing.
But it's not a Pickens County affordable housing issue. It is a nationwide housing crisis. We're not the only place. If you watch any of these channels, if you listen to anything that's there, it is widespread everywhere that is having this housing crisis. It's not limited to Pickens County. And I don't think we need to make knee-jerk reaction decisions that start offering high-density housing in unincorporated rural Pickens County to try to fix a problem that's a nationwide problem. And we're trying to do all we can to listen to all sides to try to find it. But there was, if you're a social media person, there was a post just the other day on the city of Jasper development area where they're building, I think it's 100 townhomes per year for the next 3 years. 600 comments later of every single person that's going crazy about how they think it's destroying the area that they live in. That's the residents of Pickens County that we're here to represent. That's the 34,000 people that we're here to represent. We've got to protect the unincorporated parts of Pickens County. We've got to balance how do we protect what brought us all here or what caused some of us to stay here versus just trying to be like everybody else for dollars that are coming in. So we're trying to make sure that we're balancing that and we've got those options, but we can't destroy what we have because you can't come back and undestroy it. Once it's destroyed, it's done. And a developer will move into an area and overdevelop and oversaturate every single bit that we allow them to do if we're not careful. So that's why we're trying to be careful to prevent that from being the case. It's not to try to create issues or to limit housing, but we don't want to destroy what we have at the same time.
Chris, let me ask you a question, please.
Yes.
What are y'all classifying high-density housing at?
More than 1 per acre is what we're using as a definition. So.
Okay, so it's not the quantity so much as it is, if I had 500 acres, I could build 500 homes.
Yeah.
To me, that's high density.
If you do a 500 acre home.
I've got 15 acres and I want to build 50 houses, right. You're saying that's high density.
We've got a completely different set of rules when you go into major subdivisions versus minor subdivisions. So the developers have to build roads to certain standards, they have to be able to build curb and gutter. if they want to go with smaller lot sizes. So most of the subdivisions, for instance, if you have a rural residential zone property and you don't want to put curb and gutter in, you have to do 3-acre lots. So the developers will come in and do a 3-acre lot for a subdivision to prevent having to put the infrastructure cost into what they're doing when they're building a major subdivision. So there's a different set of rules and regulations when you're putting in those higher density development areas. We're concentrating on number of places per acre is what we're describing. Anything else? Anybody else?
I think another part of it is this Jim Kirk. But I think another part of it is the development, rather than discussions about how we can serve existing population and have businesses that can serve existing populations, is to have more people coming in for revenue and enjoying themselves than the folks that live in Pickens County. Is there anything that you can tell us about access coming off of 515 going downtown? I know there's been land that's got mothballs all over it from the highway department about doing some things and trying to make it more attractive at the 515 area to make that more of a revenue engine for our county.
So the plan that you're talking about does exist. Rick and the DOT brought in a copy of that the other day and we were looking at it. So they are still in the works. It's one of those that's going to be a very costly adventure to try to expand that where it's going in. I know that the city of Jasper's been working on their downtown redevelopment like crazy. That if you go pretty much any evening now, it's downtown is packed full of cars. So there's a lot of activity that's going on. In those different categories that are trying to find ways to work together on how to get that approved. So.
I have a question, Carolyn Patel. Josh, you mentioned early on in your comments about concerns from some of the comments from all three of you, your concerns. You referenced Worley Preserve and then what's going on along Philadelphia Road. And of course, then there's Piedmont Residential, Grandview Gateway. It's all that corridor of 515 you're talking about. So do you have any further comment on that kind of growth? There's all different developers, different builders.
Well, are you asking if we can do it? Because that's all in the city. The city can obviously do whatever they want to. That's completely separate. Or do you mean?
Well, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. All that development, that's all been annexed to the city, so they can do whatever they want to.
It's been interesting to watch it because, we see things people coming up from Buckhead to Alpharetta, from Alpharetta to Milton, from Milton up this way now, and all up and down. The clearing of the trees and allowing them to do what they need to do.
One of the reasons I ran is because I work for Buck Jones Nursery down in Hickory Flat. I have for 19 years now. And it's gone in that period of time from, one red light there at East Cherokee and 140 to just this explosion of homes, just non-stop subdivisions. And the 7 miles from my nursery to 575, which you used to be able to drive in 10 minutes, now can take 30. And that's the horror that could happen that I worry about. That our lovely rural county would be transformed into what's happened to South Cherokee. And that's what we are working to have not happen. And that's what happens when developers come in and just take over. Yeah. When you run sewage everywhere, like Cherokee did, they ran it through all their southern rural part of the county, and now they run it up to Ball Ground, and the same thing's gonna happen there. So that's why we're doing this. I know we're not doing it to sound mean or cruel or pick the winner. We're not. It's about preserving our county and the reason we all live here.
But you don't even shop over here, Josh. You live out here. You don't come over here. So it's not impacting you at all. It's not affecting your paycheck whatsoever. It's affecting all of ours and our employees. Okay.
That's true, and that's why if we could have a solution presented to us from Utilities Inc. that
You
doesn't.
started off when you were running, you flat out said you didn't want growth over here, period. You didn't care if we had sewage. You didn't care if we shut down. Did you not?
I think I was
Yes, you
speaking in
did.
hyperbole, but
You did. That's very unfair, number one.
Okay.
We're supporting you. You work for us. We don't work for you. Okay? You know, change the subject.
Yes, sir.
Is anything being done about a roundabout at Tate?
Is it still on the books, Rick?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, yeah, the state DOT has sent over a draft just a couple months ago that they have one. It's the state that's actually putting one in that was trying to get it. I don't have a target date on that one. When we had the last meeting, they didn't have a date on it yet.
Well, that's something positive and good.
So, yeah. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up?
One last one. City of Jasper can do high density and should. All the high density development should be within the city limits, right? When you say we don't want it, it's just rural unappropriated.
Correct.
Pickens County. Jasper, Nelson, the other part, cities, incorporated cities can and should be doing high density development to support that need, right?
Yes, they can, yes.
And you would support that if Jasper wanted. I mean, I know you don't control it, but that would be okay, right?
Yep. I mean, and they are, and I'm not saying that to try to pick on them, but when you look at what's currently under construction and approved, there's about 2,000 homes currently either under or approved for construction, which led to their sewer expansion that they're in the middle of. So I mean, Jasper's working on creating housing opportunities in the center of our county seat. We're just trying to protect the rural portions that go outside of the county seat from letting that sprawl over to where you never see where the city limits end.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.